G'day, Starlo here. One of the most common questions I get asked is about the differences between fishing a soft plastic lure and a hard-bodied lure, particularly a floating, diving, minnow or plug. These are two really popular styles of fishing and people wonder what it is that separates the two and when you know that you're better off doing one rather than the other. So that's exactly what I'm going to look at in this episode. I'm going to look at soft plastics, and I'm going to look at hard-bodied lures, and I'm going to talk about their different applications, the scenarios that each one works better in, how to know when to switch from one to the other, and all of those other questions that I get asked all the time. And if you watch right till the end, I'll give you a couple of tips and clues about the differences between soft plastics and hard bodies that you might not have thought of. Now, which one to start with? I'm going to start off with the hard body. Let's see how we go. Okay, so the hard body that I'm starting off with is a fairly standard mid-depth running, floating, diving plug. I'm in just over 1 metre of water here, but I know I'm drifting down into deeper water that'll get to 2 and eventually 3 metres deep. I reckon this lure will dive on a typical cast and retrieve to about 1.8 to 2 metres, but I don't have to make it go that deep every time, and I'll show you how I can manipulate that. I've deliberately picked a line here where I've got the wind behind me, which is really important when you're throwing these fairly light lures. You can cast them a lot further if you've got the breeze behind you. It doesn't always work out that way, but if you can do it, why not? Because the more water you can cover, the more fish you're going to catch. I'm shooting it well down the flats here, and that's what I'm on here, a flat. There are some weed beds, there's sand and gravel, there's a little bit of bait fish rippling every now and again. There's not a lot of life showing here. I'm just prospecting. I haven't really seen anything on the sounder. I'm just having a bit of a blind fish at the moment with the hard body, and that is one thing that hard bodies are pretty good at, covering ground reasonably quickly. When I say quickly, I'm not going to retrieve it particularly quickly, but I'm going to make lots of casts and cover water with this lure, probably a little bit more efficiently than I could with the soft plastic. So when you're prospecting, a hard body can be a good choice. You'll notice too that I'm not just casting it out and mechanically cranking it in. I'm working that lure all the time. Also, I check it when it comes up through the water, not only to look for potentially a fish following it, but also to check for things like weed on the hooks, that's not good, and to see if the lure's swimming properly. It really pays to just swim that lure up and down. See, this one's going out a tiny bit to the right when I pull it a bit faster. So I know that if I bend that eyelet just a tiny bit back to the left, it should straighten. Believe it or not, I can even just do it with my thumbnail because I only need to move it a fraction of a millimetre. There you go, it's swimming straight now. That didn't take too much. All right, so I'll keep shooting it down the flats here, well ahead of me, crank it down to its running depth, and then slow down, and lots of stops and starts and pauses. That lure will slowly rise in the water column every time I pause and then dive back down again. And that was one of the things I meant when I said you don't have to run it at its maximum operating depth all the time. By pausing and letting it float up, you can keep it up a little bit higher in the water. Now this is another strength of hard bodies to my mind. With a soft plastic, unless you're actually on the bottom, it's hard to know where in the water column you are. I mean, I love the fact that you can fish the whole water column with a soft plastic, but apart from letting it sink to the bottom and starting there, you're guessing a little bit as to where it might be during the retrieve. If you just straight retrieve it, it's going to lift up and travel somewhere through mid-water. And it's hard to say exactly what depth it will be at. But with this hard body, because I know how deep it dives, I can control it fairly accurately. All right, we're actually drifting into slightly shallower water, so I'm going to move out here a little bit. I actually don't mind these conditions. It's heavily overcast, a little bit breezy, very cold, but the cloud cover might actually help us. All right, we're getting out to a little bit of a gradual drop off now from just over 1 metre down towards 1.5 metres. This is a good area. So I'll start prospecting again with the hard body. Even though it's overcast, you'll notice I've got my Mako polarized sunglasses on. It's just helping me to differentiate the different types of bottom. Back in that shallower water, I could see the darker weed patches and the lighter sandy patches. I'm a little bit deep now to see the bottom, but it still helps me cut that glare and watch my lure come up through the water column and things like that. So even on an overcast day, polarized sunnies are really advantageous when you're lure or fly fishing or doing any kind of fishing. There's the safety aspect too. They protect your eyes, not only from the sun, but from lures and rod tips flying around. Keep your sunnies on as much as you possibly can when you're fishing. Notice also how I regularly glance down at the sounder. I'm not so much looking for fish as making sure that I'm staying in touch with that 1.5 to 2 metre contour. There's very little here in the way of obvious structure. I've got no sticks or rocks poking up. There are some rocks about 120, 150 metres further ahead of me, and I will work my way over to them. But these flats that I'm on could be a great spot for bream, silver trevally, tailor, flathead, all kinds of fish. And all of them will eat a hard-bodied lure at one stage or another. Although they're not playing the game yet, but I'm quietly confident if I keep concentrating and doing the right things with my lure, I reckon it will get eaten. It's just a matter of time, surely. All right, I'll talk you through a typical cast and retrieve with a floating, diving, hard-bodied lure like this. And it begins with me making the longest possible cast that I can down these flats. And you'll notice I close the bail arm and retrieve quite quickly because I'm picking up that belly of braided line that was hanging up there in the breeze. Now I've made contact with the lure, I can feel it swimming, and I'm diving it down to its operating depth. And then when I get it there, I start making those stops and starts and movements of the rod tip just to enhance the action of that lure. Always thinking about what the lure's doing down there, jinking along, pausing, rising slowly in the water, diving again. I'm trying to make it look like a little fish foraging along, looking for food, or a crab that's been dislodged off the bottom, or a little squid or an octopus that's swimming in the water column. Always trying to make it look like something edible, just to provoke the curiosity and the aggression of a fish, hopefully. All right, picked up a little bit of weed right at the end of that retrieve. It's really important to get that off because fish will rarely hit the lure while it's got weed on it. It does happen from time to time, but it's pretty rare. You might be wondering, why did I start with the hard-bodied lure? Well, I had to start with one or the other, so it was a 50-50 choice. But also, I haven't fished this body of water for quite a while, and I don't know where the fish are in it, so I do want to prospect a little bit. I want to cover a fair bit of water, and as I said, hard bodies are good for that. If I find some concentrations of fish, I might then switch over to a soft plastic, which I regard as perhaps slightly more effective at convincing fish, but I need to know that I'm actually putting it in front of some fish, and the hard body might help me find that out. Although not so far. All right, I'm getting closer to that structure I was talking about now, the obvious structure, the rocks that are poking up here. So this is a prime area. I'm going to start shooting the lure in towards those rocks. I actually felt the lure bump the bottom then, so I know it's not very deep here. I don't want to be constantly picking up weed, so I'm just going to try and keep that lure a little bit higher in the water column. I feel like I'm definitely in with a chance now. I need to make these next couple of casts count. Oh, yep, there we go. Oh, it's a good fish too. It's a good fish. Oh, spot lock here. Try and keep him away from the rocks. And that is one of the things I love about hard bodies. That strike was whack, no mistaking. He just slammed it. Whereas sometimes with the soft plastics it can be a little bit more hesitant. Oh, it's a lovely big bream. It's a lovely fish. Ho, 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 ho. Oh, I haven't got him yet. Oh. I'm only on a 6-pound leader here, so I've got to be a bit careful. He's gone right through under the boat. Getting close to the electric. Gorgeous fish. That's one to the hard body. There we go. Have a look at that for a lovely brim, and there's that. He's laced up on the hard body. He's got both trebles in the lip there. Lovely fish. Oh, that breeze has got an edge to it. It's coming off snow somewhere not too far away. I'll turn him around, give you a proper look. He'd be getting up close to the 40 centimetre mark and close to the kilo mark. Just a lovely fish. He whacked it and went hard. He wanted to get back into the rocks there. I had to give him a bit, about as much as I could give him on a 6-pound leader and very light braid. But there you go. One for the hard body. I'll stick with it a bit too because I like this kind of country for a hard body. I'll get this one in the live well. Alright, that's getting into the zone. Not quite as close to the rocks as I would have liked, but perhaps close enough. But although I worked over those rocks from several more angles, I failed to score another hit. Time for a move and a change of game plan. So I've had a change of location and I've also had a change of outfits. I've gone to my soft plastic now. Got a little squidgy prawn on there, bloodworm coloured on a very light head, 2-gram jig head. I'm out in about 3 metres of water. It looks like I'm out in the open, but I know that there's a couple of trees lying on the bottom here. But the bottom's pretty clean. There's not much weed or anything around the trees, so I feel pretty confident about going to the soft plastic. I'm going to lob it in close to where I know one of these trees to be, get it to the bottom and just bounce it out. We'll see how we go. I'm having to punch up into the wind here because I'm using the anchor function on the motor guide to hold myself in position a nice casting distance from the tree, but that means that I'm downwind from it, so I'm having to punch this jig up into the wind. I might need to get a bit closer. Actually, that's not too bad. I figure I'm pretty close to the mark. Yep. Oh, dropped him. Oh. Picked it up on the drop and I didn't get a good hook set. And there's another difference between hard bodies and soft plastics. When you've got 2 sets of trebles on a hard body and 6 points, you probably got a bit better chance of actually pinning the fish. I pinned that fish. I had weight on him. I pulled him for a couple of metres through the water, but he just wasn't hooked properly. It's because he picked it up on the drop and I didn't even really feel the bite until I came tight. Not ideal. And there's the tree. I got snagged on it, so I'm going to actually move up and get my lure off. It's not very pleasant out here. I'm going to move in out of this wind a bit. I'll see if I can twang the lure off the snag now that I'm up close to it. It usually works, but not always. Broke it off. Damn. Ended up losing my soft plastic. I was trying to bounce it off that tree and I'd say the 6-pound leader got cut by a barnacle or something down there. It broke fairly easily. Yeah, it's got a chafe at the end of it. Now there is an advantage of soft plastics. If I'd lost my hard-bodied lure, it's about $23 worth. Plastic in a jig head, about $2.50. Bit of a difference there. All right, I'm going to get out of this wind a little bit if I can, tie another soft plastic on here and see if we can find some fish in a slightly friendlier location. I did find a better spot too, a rocky shoreline, and I can't help myself. I've gone back to the hard body. But that wind just isn't letting up. In fact, it's getting stronger. And that sky looks positively menacing. But I don't think the brim mind. Watch my rod tip closely. Oh yes! On the paws. Oh, had a little bit of a quiet stretch along there, but I felt reasonably confident just plugging the hard body in there. Feels like a good fish. It's got so dark and dingy, I've had to take my sunnies off. Oh, it's a good, oh yeah, it's a nice fish. Another one for the hard body. It's a day for the hard body. And I think the fact that this wind's blowing and pushing me along is also making me prefer the hard body a little bit. Oh, this is a good fish. This is a big fish. I want to show you this one. Oh, he's not done yet. There we go. I'll just put us on anchor. Oh, yes. That's the one I wanted. Have a look at that. For a beast of a brim. Oh, I've got to be careful he doesn't get that hook in his eye. It's just beside his eye socket. Oh, I'm going to have to measure that one. Oh no, he's okay. It's not in his eye. There we go. Wow. What a stunning fish. Yeah, he whacked it on the paws. I'll get a length on that in a minute, but I'd say he's a good 42 or 43 to the tail tips. And how's the girth on it? Oh, look, I love my soft plastic fishing, but I also love that crunch when they take a hard body. It's pretty special. I will show you some soft plastic tips though too, because trust me, over the years I've caught a lot more brim on soft plastics than I have on hard bodies, but I do love the ones on hard bodies. All right, I'll get this one in the well. I'll get a measurement on him too. It actually went 45 centimetres to the tail tips and 41 to the fork. A serious brim in anyone's language. Be sure to look for part 2 of this masterclass when I take a deep dive into soft plastics, and if you enjoyed this first part, give me a like down below. Also, be sure to check out these other 2 videos for more nitty-gritty how-to info. And until next time, this is Starlo wishing you tight lines.